Okay, let's start. Just a few things before we get started. We are going to see how Spring Boot is working under the hood. I know that there are too many details. These too many details cannot be covered just in one single session. So we are just going through many of them, and you can go further in details, deep dive into the code with the GitHub repo. Also, if you have any questions, please raise your hands, ask your questions. Do not hesitate to ask. I'm always encouraging you people to participate, and I love connecting with the community. So please ask your questions. If you have any other questions, we can take further those questions later on after the talk. Just a little about me. My name is Andres Cespedes Morales. I'm an open source contributor of bugs and also features. I'm working for Backbase in Netherlands, and I'm also a participant in all these open source opportunities. If you are on Twitter, how many of you are on Twitter? Everyone, right? So I'm posting photos so we can keep in the loop there. You can find me on Twitter and on GitHub and also in my website. So if you have any questions after the talk, please reach out to me through the social media. So this is our brief agenda. We are going just to cover 3 simple points. I don't want to amuse you with a huge amount of information, just to give you a clear information. Okay, this is Spring Boot and why we have chosen Spring Boot for this talk. Also, we are going to cover the auto-configuration magic, that we just include the Spring Boot starters, and all this magic start happening under the hood. And after that, as the title says, we are trying to master Spring Boot, so we are going to learn how to master this skill. So what and why? Well, we have chosen Spring Boot because many of you know. But let's, before we get started in this point, how many of you have never used Spring Boot? Have never, ever used Spring Boot? Nice. Well, I will try to catch you up, guys, with the whole team, and bring you all along with the entire audience at the same level. So in the Java enterprise applications, the top framework for development or using as a base component of the Java enterprise application is Spring. So Spring came up with a good idea, and it's an inversion of control, dependency injection, all this stuff. But they struggle with some problems. With the Java applications, with the Java Spring applications, they start struggling with the configuration of the classes. You end up, if you start an application, you end up having a bunch of XML files, configuring your bins there, and also getting so messy code with enormous XML files. So the guys from Pivotal came up with a good idea, that all this boilerplate configuration or cumbersome configuration should be done automatically by the Spring framework. So they come up with a Spring Boot framework. So what is a Spring Boot framework? Well, it's an opinionated framework that is trying to give you the best hint and the best use case or the best solution for the common cases. So instead of always having to configure your Tomcat embedded server or your login bin, you just need to import a dependency, and all the auto configuration, all this common configuration will be out of the box, because that's the opinion of the creators, right? That's why Spring Boot is opinionated framework. So they came up with this essential stuff. These are the main 4 topics. So we have the magic, that is the auto configuration. So instead of having these XML files, we are going to have configuration classes, right? So if you don't like to type in XML and using these editors, just switch to Java classes. We have the Spring CLI, that is the command line interface. So instead of scaffolding your project manually, you can just do this with just one run command. See? Yes? And also we have the starters. The starter is, those are a wrapper for a common libraries. So we have common libraries in our projects. So for instance, we have a web application, and we will need to, inject the dependency of Tomcat, the servlet, the Java servlet, and all these dependencies. So all the starters wrap up these dependencies, so you just have to import one, right? Also, we have the actuator. It will give us some insights and metrics about our application. So based on this, we are going to get all these features. We are going to get less XML configuration. It will be too easy to configure. We are going to bootstrap our development process. And of course, it's cool to use a top project. Well, it's not cool. You're going to get a lot of support from the community. So that's a point that you have to take care of it, right? So we are going to understand the real magic about the auto configuration. So the auto configuration in Spring Boot is simply made by one annotation, that is the Spring Boot application, right? Where you can see it in the title. So this Spring Boot application is just a group of three main annotations. These are the component scan, the configuration, and the enable auto configuration. So let's see what are those. So the component scan is the annotation that you have your application, and instead of defining explicitly all your bins in your XML files, you just have to declare the base package that you are going to look for the entire bins of your application, right? So the component scan is going to scan the base package, that is the package where the annotation lies, and all the sub-package beneath it, right? So we have a bunch of annotations like repository, controller, and service, but it's because these are meta-annotated interfaces. And what does means that they are meta-annotated? Because they also have the meta-annotation component. So all of them, they are components, and they are going to be picked up by the component scan, right? So with that, in the component scan, we are going to scan the configuration classes, right? So what is a configuration class? A configuration class is just a class that declares one or more bins that are going to be available for your application context in your Java web application, right? So this is the way that these two annotations are connected. This component scan will look for the configuration class, that is with the class that is annotated with the configuration annotation, and this class is going to provide all the bins. It's just like an analog to the Spring application.xml file, the previous file that we heard in, I don't know, 2010, something like that. And then, for the last part, we have the enable auto configuration. This annotation is the fundamental thing, is the real magic of Spring Boot. It will look for all the auto configuration classes inside of this file, in the spring.factories. And all these auto configuration classes are going to define, well, how your application is going to behave. So this is the puzzle of these three annotations. The enable auto configuration is a configuration class, just using a magical conditionals in there. So because this is too heavy to understand just with the slides and to take snapshots of the code, let's go to the code and really understand what's happening here. So before, I just had to prepare something here because it will take too much time if I start just from the beginning. So let's go back. It's in the Java2Days, and we have the mastering Spring Boot. So here we have just a wrapper for our project and just a simple service. So let's start this application using an alias for IntelliJ. So we type idea and open the POM XML file. So we have this wrapper, just a basic Maven project. And we can start writing our code. So let's suppose that this is our application. Wherever you are working, if you are in Bosch or you are in Microsoft, well, not in Microsoft, but so this is the project. So let's start writing our code, create our first interface as a good, and we are going to define a pretty complex interface. An interface that defines too many methods. Let's call it greetings. So we are going to say hello to everybody. And let's implement that in our project. So let's call it service implementation. Oh, sorry. Let's rename it here. Yeah, right. So let's implement that interface and implement that server, that method, sorry. And let's say that we are going to say, hello, Java2Days, right? Rocket science, right? So with this, we just have our service that is saying hello. Let's inject this service in a Spring Boot application to see how is this inject. So here we can make use of the Spring CLI. Many of you maybe have heard about Spring. Sorry, Spring. Many of you have heard about start.spring.io, right? Many of you have heard about it. Many of you have Joe's long presentation that he is always talking about this. So we can either use this UI to scaffold our project. So just give the group ID and the artifact ID for the Maven project, and it will generate a bunch of classes and directories, and it will include the Spring Boot starters that you decide. For instance, if we leave it as it is, you won't use any starter of a Spring Boot. At least we should use the web, but I don't use to use this UI. I like to use the command line. So instead of doing this, we have just one service. Make a directory for the application of our project. Let's go there, and let's scaffold that. Sorry, let's do it this way. Yeah. Is it clear enough? Yes? Yeah. So with this directory, we can scaffold our project using the Spring init command. So we type Spring init, please init this. The dependencies will be just web. The group ID will be just Java2Days, right? The artifact ID for this project will be mastering as the name of the folder application. The package name will be the same, com.java2days.mastering, and I think that's it, right? So it's going to use the default start.spring.io, and it creates a project here. So we can see that right now we have a project. So we can see that in the IntelliJ, import it as a Maven project, and we just scaffolder project. So let's inject this previous service in our application. Let's call dependency. Oh, yeah, right. And let's create a mastering service. So here we are including all the classes in our project, right? So we have a Spring Boot application that is injecting a normal service, an API. So it doesn't needs to depend on the Spring Boot framework. So with this, let's try to build a complex service, a complex controller. I don't want to declare too many things here, so I'm just going to create the controller over there, just right there. I don't want to create a package and all those stuff. Sorry. Let's rename it as a hello controller. So to expose this in the web, in the Explorer, so we are going to annotate this as a REST controller, and we need to inject that hello service in our code, right? We are going to expose an endpoint with the request mapping, and we are going to say just hello. And let's define a method that just return a string. So let's say greetings as well. I don't want to be creative here. I don't want to deal with complexity, just to give you the real concept of this. So we are going to return the hello service dot greetings, right? So if we build this application, we are going to see that it's going to print the message in the web browser. So let's build the project, the service, right? And after this, I'm going to just run with the mastering application. So let's run the demo application. And it's going to start our Spring Boot project. So it's done. This is the log. So let me make it clear. So with just this annotation and with the dependencies here in our project, so all the dependencies that are being inherited from the Spring Boot starter and the dependency that is included as a Spring Boot starter web, this is making this application a web application. So all the auto configuration is being kicked in because all these classes are present in the class path. So if we go into the server, into the web browser, we see that there is an application there, and we can go to the controller that is here. Okay, yeah, hello. We need to compile it. So let's do it here. Yeah. Okay, nice. We got an error. Why? Because we didn't create the real bean, right? So we just include that class, but there's no bean in the controller at all. So we have at least to declare one bean of hello service. So how can we do that? Because this is a configuration class, we can declare it here. So let's return this hello service. So just call it this way using the naming convention. And I'm going to return a new hello service implementation with no arguments. So with just this, this is going to include this bean into the application context, and it's going to be picked up by the controller. So if we go here, okay, it's saying that we don't have any hello service. Okay, why? Because we can either use two ways of injection, of dependency injection. We can either use the auto while for field injection, or we can use a constructor injection. So we can just say public hello controller and inject this as a dependency, as a mandatory dependency. Or we can just simply use our friend, the auto while. So it's going to auto while the bin that is in the application contents. So with all these steps, we got the Spring bin inject. So we got the Hello2Days from our service that is here. So this is our basic steps. But let's try to make this more flexible and more smart, right? Using our auto configuration. So I don't want to specify this bin. I don't want. So just let's create our service as an auto configuration class to see the real magic. So let's go back. Let's go create again a new folder. Let's call it this time mastering auto configure. So with this mastering auto configure, we are going to bootstrap the project using this Spring Init CLI. So instead of having the mastering application, we are going to have the mastering auto configure. And that's it, right? So let's run it. So it will scaffold the project, and we are going to see that project here in the ID. So we import that project as a Maven. So we already have this auto configure to do the entire magic. So let's do it quickly to not get slipped. So first, we have to include our dependency of our service. What are we going to configure? So we have this dependency that is our mastering service, right? So we just include that, and we are going to auto-configure that bin. So let's do it here. So we have that dependency. Let's get rid of this class. I don't need it. And also get rid of the test. So let's include a new class that is going to be the hello auto configure. And this is the crucial part, or the fundamental part. So first step, annotate your class with the configuration annotation. So just say configuration. If we see this is just a component, it's just an specialization of component, right? So in this auto configure, I'm going to use to declare the bin. So I don't want to write it again. So I'm going to get it from here, and I'm going to steal it. I'm going to steal this bin, and I'm going to declare it here. Nice, right? So we have this bin in our auto configure class. So how can we tell Spring, hey, Spring, load this class? But this is an auto configure class. It's not a normal configuration, a user configuration. So all the magic is done in a folder. We have to create a meta-in folder and create a file that is spring.factories. All the magic is here. So inside of this file, you have to say to Spring Boot, hey, this is my auto-configure classes, right? So please load all these classes if there's no other configuration classes for these bins. So what does this mean? So we have this enable auto-configuration annotation. Enable. not here, here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back here. And this annotation. So let's take this reference, and this reference we are going to put it here. So this is just like a properties file. You have a key pair value. So the first part of the key is the enable auto configuration. So with this annotation, all these classes that are defined here are going to be picked up by the Spring contents. So in the enable auto configuration, I want to list our hello auto configure. So put it here. So when the Spring Boot application starts, what is happening here is all your user configuration, for instance, you have these configuration classes in your class path. So they are going to be evaluated first than this auto configuration, because Spring Boot doesn't want to replace your configuration. This is the default. This is the opinion. So this is the default path. If you give an opinion, a user configuration, you are deviating from the default because you need it. So this is going to be kind of loaded in a second phase. And all these auto-configured classes are going to bind all these beans into the application contents. So, okay, so after that, let's run the example again. We have the auto-configure. We are auto-configuring the bean. And we have to include this in our server, sorry, in our application. So instead of including the mastering service, just include the auto-configure. So include this, and this is going to auto-configure the bean. So just let's do this. So here in our hello service, we have this. Let's recompile our projects. Right. So recompile this. Okay. I'm going to do another step. So after this, we have this in the, okay, right. So as we delete our Spring application, if we inherit from the parent, it cannot compile the product. So just get rid of this, and we just need to, of course, we cannot compile because we are not inheriting the property of the version. So let's call it version, and let's give the version of this dependency. It's just that. So let's do it this way. We have another in the Spring Boot mastering auto configure, and we have this. Of course, we are using the test, so we have just to get rid of all these unnecessary dependencies. So with this dependency, just the Spring Boot Starter Web and our service, we are able to auto-configure our class or application. So let's run it again. Demo application. Let's redo it. It's running here. So just relaunch our application. And hopefully the Java2Days will stay in the Google Chrome. So the Java2Days stay because what happened here? Let's take a look of this. So I'm gonna stop the application and I'm gonna run it in a different way. So we have this application. Well, we are using IntelliJ Ultimate, so this allows us all these additional steps. But we can easily just send the debug flag. Or if we are using the Maven plugin, we can just do it this way. I'm going to do it by Maven because this is the common way to run a Spring Boot application. So let's go to mastering application and run with the Spring Boot Maven plugin. So we have to say Spring Boot, not root, boot, run. And we have to send a parameter that is the debug flag. So let's send an argument with the -d, and we are going to run the application with the debug mode enabled. So with all this debug mode, we are going to see a report. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen this report before, but there's a hello here. So here's the report. So it says, hey, there are unconditional classes. There are classes that are going to be picked up always. So if we take a look on these classes, they are always there because they don't have conditions. So our mastering hello autoconfigure was picked up because we just declared it using the configure annotation, but we didn't give any condition to load that class. So let me do it in a different way. So what if we already gave a bin of hello service? We don't want to replace that bin with the auto configuration. So instead of that, here's the other step for the magic. Just use the conditional. So the first step of the conditions is to look that the conditional on class is valid. Why? Because we have this, and we declare that at least has to be this class. So what do you think about this conditional on class? Why is it mandatory or necessary? Because if we don't give a hello service class, if it's not in the class path, this is going to blow up, and you're gonna be fired after that. So you have to first check that your class that you are going to configure is in the class path. And after that, you can give more conditions. For instance, the most basic condition. Let's say that the conditional on missing bin is met. So we have this conditional. So what are those two conditions saying? The first one is looking for the hello service class in the class path, and the second one is looking into the application context that at least there is a hello service bin, right? And which one is our hello service bin? The hello service implementation, right? So this is our bin that is being created here in the hello auto configure, right? So if we give an opinion of this on this hello service implementation, this auto configuration won't be kicked in. So let's take a look on that. So we have our application, and we can just define again our bin. So let's do it again. We have our bin, like doing bin in the Spring XML file. So just create a hello service. This hello service is just a plain implementation of that. So return a new instance of the hello service implementation. Right. Simple as that. So let's rerun this, and let's see if the hello auto configure was picked up and is still unconditional for the Spring Boot. So just shut down the Java machine and rerun in the debug mode. So it's going to compile again the resources. And No, we have to do it here. Here, right? So let's package this again. And also let's do this in the hello autoconfigure project. So we rebuild and install the artifact in the local Maven repo. So with this, we can run again. So the new project, let's go to our application. If we look for this form, we have the hello autoconfigure. In the hello autoconfigure, we have the service. And in this service, we have our default implementation. So let's run again. What happened? It's gone. Why? Because a condition was matched, did match. So where is it? This is the previous execution, the other previous, and this is. So we got this. Hey, the hello autoconfigure. What happened? So it's saying, okay, the conditional on missing bin did not match. Why? Because we provide a bin in our application. Where? Here. We declare it, right? So we declare a bin, so the auto configuration is not kicked in the Spring context. But the first condition, conditional on class, match, right? As you see here, match, because it found in the class path the required class. So at least this is the way that we can enable the auto configuration. But this is still too simple. Let's do it in a better way. So let's externalize the configuration of this service. We have this hello service implementation, and let's make it to accept a parameter. So let's say that we are going to say hello using a string, a name. So let's use this name. Let's say that hello name. And let's change the implementation, the interface, right? So in our auto configuration, we right now have a constructor that allow us, okay, yes, and another one, just a simple constructor. So we have both constructors, and we can use those to use externalized configuration in our class. So with this property, let's go to auto configure, and let's use a different value. We can even set a member class here. Let's use it name, and this name by default is going to be Bulgarian. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. So we are going to use name here, right? So in the auto configuration, we are saying, hey, hello Bulgaria, we are here. But in our application, we are saying, no, not hello Bulgaria, hello Sofia, right? And we have to send that here. Yes. Also the greetings, okay, of course, we changed it. And let's put another where I'm coming from, Amsterdam. So we have three different values. We have our bin, right? The bin that we are declaring in our application. It's saying, hey, no, I just want to say hello Sofia. In our hello service, we are sending the Amsterdam, right? So we are going to send this parameter here. So hello greetings, right? So we are just using this parameter. And in our auto configuration, we have hello Bulgaria. So let's do it this way. Let's say that we are going to use, we are not going to use a parameter, and let's use the real, the member attribute, the class attribute, right? So we don't need it here. And we are going to use just this, in this way. So let's rebuild the projects again. The autoconfigure is going to be, oh, yes, these have an order of compilation, so I have to build first the service, then I have to build the autoconfigure, and then I can build the application. So let's build it again, right? And let's build this. Right, so all the three projects are built, and we can relaunch our application. So let's relaunch it. And let's see what it's showing us here. So he's saying, hey, hello, Sophia. Why? Because our opinion is stronger than the auto-configure opinion, right? So if we say, I just want to use this value, if we don't want to use that, we can just simply eliminate this bin and rerun the application. It's gonna take the default value of the auto configuration. For this case, it's going to be Bulgaria, so this stay there. So let's run it again. Okay, and if we run this, you see, hey, hello Bulgaria, we are here, because the auto configuration kicked in, because we didn't provide any opinion. So let's go further, and let's use a powerful tool that is using the properties files. So in the auto configure, we can define a properties model just to hold all the properties of your application. So let's say that we have these hello properties. This is just a simple podio, and this is a configuration properties class. This is not a component annotation. This is just to tag or to bind the environment of the ID with this class. We just have to provide a prefix for this. For this case, we are going to use hello, and we just have one property this time. That is the name of the guy that we are going to say hello. Let's say this, and just don't forget to generate your getters and setters. That's it. So with this, we just have to include this in the auto configure class. For instance, hello.properties, hello properties. And instead of using this value, we can use the hello properties get name to get that value from our properties file. But also, we have to tell Spring Boot, hey, use these configuration properties for this class. So enable the configuration properties annotation. We'll tell to Spring Boot, this is our properties files or properties class for this auto-configure class. So with this, if we define a property in our application, that properties, we are going to get the value from there instead of getting that value from the Java code. So right now, we can include this in our application. Let's build our projects again, and we are going to see something really nice. Our application will be able to auto-complete our properties using this. So also, as we saw before, the IntelliJ is complaining about it. Hey, but you don't have the configure annotation processor in your class path. Okay, let's add it. So this is the magic for the auto completion of the properties. just include the Spring Boot configuration processor. And let's use the latest stable version because I don't want surprises. So let's use the latest release, right? And with this processor, the IntelliJ will be able to load all these properties in the all these member class in the properties files. So here, let's build our projects again. Let's do a package of that. And in our application, hopefully, if we type here, hello, we are getting an auto-completion for our properties. So IntelliJ is grabbing all the properties. So imagine just this. Instead of having a hello.dat properties, you can group up all your company's properties or all your API's properties. Put it just inside of a domain, let's say Java2Days dot. So you can say to your providers, okay, all my properties, all my configuration is under Java2Days dot, and they just can grab all these properties without knowing all of them, any of them. Also, you can give insights of what this property is doing. So instead of having this plain auto-completion, we can give a hint about it doing the Java doc. So let's describe it, right? So if we describe this, and we include this again in our project, or application with load this configuration. So let's try this out. And this is going to be the last part of the demo. Let's check this out. So we have this property. So let's package our application again. Right. So in our application, that properties, if we go to the application, right? So right now, if we type, the property is showing us a hint, a description of the property. Hey, this property is made for this. So let's give a name. So let's call it again Java2Days from Sofia, right? And let's see if this name is going to be picked up in our application. So hopefully, after this, just shut down our application, run it again, and if we go to our, we have, okay, sorry. Okay, we are missing a dependency here. So let's go back to our application. We have the auto configure. Let's build all, we miss this one. So let's build it again. And let's include our processor in our application. So this configuration is going to be part of this as well. So let's get rid of this. No, not this here. And after that, okay. Yes, of course, because we are not giving this. Let's run it again. Oh. Sorry. Of course. of course, we have enabled the bin, so we just want to use the auto configuration. So let's use the auto configuration part instead of using the opinionated bin. So hopefully, we are getting an exception because the hello service cannot instantiate. We cannot instantiate the hello service here in the hello auto configure class. Okay, because this hello properties is not being included. Sorry for that. So just auto wire or hello properties. Let's build it again, and that will be. So let's clean package install, right? Our new auto configure dependency is including the properties. We missed that. Let's do it again. Oh. And then we can run again our application. Right, so if we go to our browser, he is taking the property value of the application, that properties, Java2Days from Sophia. Right, so the last part of this, pretty briefly. So we already covered how to truly master the auto configuration, but still there are 3 ways to master this skill. There is our first one, Stack Overflow. There is analog, Gitter. The people start using Gitter. But also, this is my real path for you to master this skill. Just try to replicate this talk with not too many issues as I did in your companies and in your professional, in your personal projects. Use it in production. Don't be afraid of that. Customize all this auto configuration and do a knowledge transfer like this. Hopefully, hope to see you giving this the second part of this talk the next year. Thank you very much. Any questions so far? Thank you for showing up, guys.